My name is Joe from Joseph's Edge Tools, and this is going to be a new thing for me, trying out some YouTube videos. I'm going to use the camera equipment I have, which is a Sony handheld digital family camera. So if it goes well, I'm going to upgrade. The content on here is going to be pretty specific to what I do. There's not going to be, any this is how you have to do it. I'm just going to kind of demonstrate how I do things and what works for me. Just as some good content out there on YouTube for knife making and blade making. So anywho, today I am surface grinding with my Wuertz surface grinder and the TW90 2x72 belt sander, which is a phenomenal machine. That's one of the things, if you decide to become a knife maker, file some blades out. But I gotta stop saying that. Yeah, I think I made it through one bevel with a hand file, and I bought a machine because it's just, I've got a time constraint. This is a part-time gig for me, and I'm doing it because I like doing it. So anything that can save time, I'm all about. But I'm going to bring you over here, and I gotta stop saying that. Get you a little closer and show you the setup for surface grinding. Alright, well here we are. You can see what I've had on there last time. I use Gorilla Tape, and I'll get into that in a minute. But just regular black Gorilla Tape to put over the surface grinder. I've made one. When you get this surface grinder, you have to make a pass to true it up to your machine. So this has been one pass that's been made, and I took it up to 220. But if you don't put tape on this thing, this is not an on-off switch magnet. It's an on magnet, neodymium magnets. Travis, if you ever make a on-off switch one, I'm buying it. But this one is not, so you got to slide your blades on and off. So I put a piece of tape over it, and it protects them. Otherwise, you will scratch the bejeebies out of a 220 grit surface. So this is one of the previous ones that I had, the last one I had on here. The reason I take it off every time is it heats up. It's tape, and it's just not flush anymore. It's not true. And this one actually is pretty good, but I'm not going to take any chances. See right there, it's got a little boogered up spot. It comes off, and I'm going to put another one on. It also has some grip capabilities to the blade. When you're doing this, if you can, at about 60 grit, a 60 grit belt, you can safely take off about 5/1000ths. Be your own judgment if you're doing this at home, but that's what I do. I take off about 5/1000ths each pass. You can take 10 off, maybe for 2 or 3 passes. After that, that belt's going to grab your blade and throw it against the wall. That's just too much. So 60 grit, I try to do 5/1000ths, and at 220, I do about 1/1000th. And that's what we're doing now. Actually, I've been tapering some tangs. Here's one that's tapered. Okay, and both sides are to 220 grit sandpaper. Now I'm taking one that's at 60 grit, and I'm gonna taper this other side, okay, to 220. So the surface grinder has a really cool feature on it. It's got a 6-inch pivot. Here's your pivot, and you got a bar at 3 inches, and you got a bar at 6 inches to put a feeler gauge down there and set your distance and set your taper. These knives are getting a .0535 taper on them, and you can I guess say you can reach that accuracy with this machine. You can say that all you want. You get pretty close. you don't get down to a half a thou. But anyways, it's very, very good tolerances for handmade knives. Now, I use a sheet of, this is just like packing styrofoam paper to take, it takes burrs off of blades and grind dust off real nice, and it just obviously all sticks into the corrugated small features of that. So that's cheap, saves your fingers, saves you from grabbing an air dust all the time, an air gun to dust your blade off. All right. And that goes on here like this. And now with it being tapered, you got this other side's tapered, but you know, you got a flat too, so you got to make sure that you put it down on the tapered side. And then I've drawn a line here on the front of my blade, and you got to line that up the best you can, best judgment, perpendicular, you know, to the surface grinding chuck. And I kind of do that. I have a piece of index card that I've folded, and I look at it, and it's all a by eye thing. You want to try and match the top and bottom, so you're bringing across the line that's straight when you go to surface grind this thing. And this makes Tapering Tangs really nice. Doing this by hand, I've attempted it and I didn't use that knife, and I just had this surface grinder because I surface grind a bunch of blades by hand, and I got within probably 5/1000ths flat doing it that way, but that's not my cup of tea. It takes forever. This takes 10 minutes a blade, and you can be real OCD about it in that short amount of time, as you can see here. Now I put I folded this specifically to fit under the blade, because if your wheel, you get close to this pivot point, your wheel is going to snap this down if you pass over it and you're trying to take off too much, even a half thou too much, and it snaps the blade down. When it does that, this part goes into the wheel and it bites on it and it throws it against the wall. So if you have a wedge or a shim, in this case an index card that's folded, your blade can't do that. It's just a stop. It's not picking it up. You just put it in there till it stops, and it's nice and snug. Okay. All right. So now let's do some surface grinding. All right. One other thing I want to cover real quick when you're tapering tangs is you see your pivot is right here, and you go 3 inches down. You have a stud to put feeler gauges. And you go another 6 inches down and you have another stud to put feeler gauges. So what you do is you taper the first side, and you can either make a stack up on the 3-inch side, and that doesn't give you a whole lot of leverage to do the next side, but if you use the 6-inch side and you make a stack up, then you just take that same feeler gauge stack up and you put it on the 3-inch side right there. And that in effect doubles the taper for your other side, so you get an even taper. Since it's exactly half from the pivot to the 6-inch, from the pivot to the 3-inch, doubles your taper angle, and you have to do that when you do your second taper. Otherwise, you will not get a matching taper. So if you're wondering how that works on paper, just draw you some triangles and kind of figure it out from there. But your first taper is one stack up, and then the other side taper is another stack up on the 3-inch, or one stack up on the 6, and then that same stack up put on the 3-inch. So that is changing your taper angle for either side of it, and what you have to do to get a nice even taper. Alright, here's the setup on the grinder. Okay, it's got 3 bearings that this slide fits over, and it's pretty smooth. You can get dirt and grime and shavings in there, You got to clean it out every once in a while and re-grease it, but that's just part of it. This is an awesome tool to have and maintain. All right, and you have your analog dial indicator that reads off in thousandths. That's a must-have. I like analog. That's just my opinion over digital, because I don't ever have to change the battery and I can read it. So when you got the machine on, all you're gonna do, I advance it until it touches the belt, and then we're gonna turn it on and surface grind, but I'm gonna put on my safety equipment. So here we go. Alright, so now we have our tapered surface ground to 220 blade. I changed belts in the middle there, and so what you're seeing on the camera is a worn 220 and a new 220, and so there's a little bit difference, but not much. And we're going to go back to our trusty packing material. Go ahead and get all this dust off. This takes but a second. Check our taper. We're this side right there, and this side right there. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'll hand sand it out from here before I put on handle scales or anything. So guys, that's, and gals, if you're into knife making, that's it. And that is tapering a tang with the Wuertz surface grinder. Hey, so I'm just going to go into quick math on that taper. Okay, it's just some simple geometry. We tapered number 3, Wharncliffe number 3, which was 0.199 to start with. We had a 4-inch taper length, which is from the back of the knife to my line there. I marked it 4 inches. Okay, our desired end thickness at the back is going to be 57 thousandths. Alright, so to get there, I've got a peg at 3 inches on that grinder, and I've got a peg at 6 inches on that grinder from my pivot. Okay, so we're just going to use law similar triangles, and we've got a 3-inch triangle, and we've got a 4-inch triangle. Okay, if our desired thickness is 0.057, and we start with a stock thickness of 0.199. I'm not going to do math in public. Let me find a calculator. Okay, 0.199 minus our 0.057. Okay, that's equal to 0.142 total thickness removed from both sides. So we're going to divide that by 2, and that comes up with 71 thousandths of an inch removed off of each side for our taper. So we know this is 3 inches. We need to know what we need to shim the grinder to. We know that's 4 inches. We know this is 0.071 inches. And now you use law of similar triangles, and we go 3 over 4 equals x over 0.071. Let's do that on the calculator. 3 divided by 4 times 0.071. Okay. And x equals 0.05325. Yeah, you're not going to get that accurate, but that's what decimals do. Alright, so what I've done, I've got 12 blades that are going to have the same taper per their geometry. I've got a couple, let's see, one's got a 4-inch taper, one's got a 4 1/8 taper, and one up here has started out with 4 1/4 taper, and I changed it to 4 3/16 just because I felt 4 1/4 was too much, and that one particular knife needed it. It had some pins that were further in front of the other handle. So that's pretty much your taper math. And I rounded that up to 0.0535 is what I used for all of them. Okay, instead of 0.05325, I just said 0.0553 because I could get there with my feeler gauges. I cannot get to here with my feeler gauges. That's a little bit too overkill and precise for what we're doing. So let's check to see how good we did. Let me grab that Wharncliffe we just surface ground. The 3. We're going to check the back with the micrometer. First time for me to check this blade after it's been surface ground. Prop it up, make it a little bit easier. We're just going to the very end. Okay, now let's see, that's reading 0.05 plus 12, so we're actually at 0.062 in game here, so that's 0.062 minus our desired, and that has to do with me rounding this maybe, and not. It's just doing this by hand. 0.057. And what is that? That's 5 thousandths off from our calculated required dimension per what we're doing. I'll take that all day. I'll take that all day. That taper looks good. It's to the end. Really lightens up the knife. So that's pretty cool. There's your quick taper math for the evening or morning or whenever you're deciding to watch this at lunch break. Thank you. Alright, well thank you for joining me on this taper tang adventure. Next time we'll have some more knife making tips for you. This content's going to stay as technical as I can make it. I gotta stop saying that. For what works for me, like I said, take it or leave it. I get good results with what I'm going to put on this channel. I'm not going to do a whole lot of video editing other than to tie these segments together. Real quick safety tip as well. These are, you know, high speed machines. No gloves. You don't want that belt grabbing you. Respirator. I wear a full face respirator with actually eyeglasses in it because I'm blind. That's been an added feature. No more fogging up and all this stuff where you can't see. Those are great. They sit out away from your face. You don't get a lot of steam or fog on them. And also I've got an apron from Dragonfly Woodworking Leather. Religiously, I just get used to wearing an apron and the full face respirator if I'm grinding on the grinder or throwing sparks or throwing wood dust. Your health is very important. And this thing is pretty solid. This is the heavyweight leather apron from Dragonfly Leather. Miss Michelle does a great job, and her husband. It's all handmade leather aprons and customized to what you need. So when I'm working on the grinder, I've got ready the wrench that matches the grinder. That's really the only thing in my on-off switch for the dust collection. Try and get as much of that stuff out of the air as possible. Alright, well I hope you all enjoyed it. Again, this is Joe from Joseph's Edge Tools, and I need to stop saying that's part of the public speaking thing. We'll get there. I appreciate you watching, hope you enjoyed the content, and we'll see you next time.